Hello and welcome to a new episode of Convert on Shopify. My name is Pancho Mendiola, and today I had an awesome conversation with Ben Labay. I hope I said it right. He said that I was saying it right. But Ben, he works for Speero. So Speero is an agency that helps you with experimentation and basically running experiments or helping you run experiments and do A/B testing, but also helping you create this experimentation culture or build it into your organization. So he has a lot of knowledge about it, and today he shared a little bit of that knowledge with us. We talked a little bit about how to properly run an experiment, what should we consider, also how do big companies do it, and why often we as startups are a little bit scared of starting to run experiments or to start building this experimentation culture within our organizations. So we helped diffuse a little bit of that fear with a lot of questions that he answered, and also if we want to start doing it, what should we consider? And he also gave us literally a masterclass around that. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So let's jump right into it. So, hey, Ben, thanks a lot for your time. Really excited to have you here and to have a great conversation. And let's start. I would like to, if you can kind of walk us through an X-ray of an experiment, like briefly and in general terms, how can we run a proper experiment?
Oh yeah, that's funny because just today, my colleague and senior experimentation strategist Paul Randall posted on LinkedIn this post about pre-registration, and it's a cool term. I used to use the term pre-mortem, and I got realized that I was using it incorrectly. Pre-registration is the better way, and to think about setting up a test or setting up a study design correctly, so you don't fall into some data traps of p hacking potentially, or harking, which is kind of post hoc rationalization effectively. When you're doing pre-registration, what you're doing is you're setting the hypothesis. If we do something, we will see something as measured by something. That three-part recipe of a hypothesis is really helpful in framing a study design, and thinking about interpreting a conclusion later down the line, because that effectively is an experiment. Anytime you have a hypothesis, and then you're going to have a conclusion at the end, or somewhere after you collect some type of data. So when you're pre-registering, the hypothesis helps. Understanding the pieces of that three-part puzzle, especially around the metrics and the targeting. When you're doing an experiment, you're doing this fun, unique activity of asking a question and collecting the data at the exact same time. And this is distinct, for example, from analytics, where you're just looking at the data and then asking a question later on. And that type of practice is much more prone to being susceptible to cognitive biases and etc., which is the reason why experimentation is considered sort of the gold standard, and goes away from causation towards causal inference and that kind of stuff. So anyway, when you're asking a question and collecting data at the same time, so it's important to set up the study design correctly, considering that. So understanding who you're targeting, how what's the audience, how you're going to randomize, on what are you going to randomize, whether people or pages or bookings or whatever it might be. And you're understanding what metrics you're going to be pointed at. You're understanding ahead of time what type of analysis you're going to do. Is it going to be a A/B test? Maybe it might be a bandit situation if you're doing headline testing, etc. So that pre-registration is critically important. And Pancho, I've rambled quite a bit on that, so I'll stop there for a second.
No, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, but I see that pre-registration as being really important, and also say that once you're in the practice of doing it, it becomes fast. It becomes real quick. You and your team can do it repetitively, because in the beginning, if you're not used to it, it can be cumbersome. You could overthink it really easily. It could take a lot of time, which is money. So you don't want it to take a lot of time. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So what I understood is that, first of all, you should ask the question before looking at the data, because if you're looking at the data, then you can come up with a question, but it could be biased by of what you're looking at, right? This happens, and you struck a nerve there because this happens to me a lot, and I totally can see it happening like again and again. So the idea is to, before that, come up with the, at least the understanding, and obviously registering it. What are you trying to measure? So you're trying to measure a buyer persona, a traffic source, a page, a button, or whatever, and then look at data so you can figure out what you're going to measure at the end in order to have a conclusion. So is that
Yeah,
a right summary?
100%. Problem focused, question focused. A really good data program, experimentation program, has these practitioners, these experimentation or data practitioners they're data producers. They're producing data for data consumers, which maybe they're product managers or whomever, to make a decision on. And so a good program will have that data producer, the data analyst, the experimenter, whomever, kind of walking around department to department. What are your marketing questions? What are your marketing questions? What are your marketing questions? Okay, well, maybe you just need a dashboard. Maybe I don't know, but this one, let's set up a test. This one, oh, let's just do a survey, that kind of thing. And so, but you can see the beginning of that is walking around asking, what are your questions? What are you trying to solve? If you had the data, how, how more quickly would you be able to respond to changes in market condition, considering your product or your funnel, the part of the funnel that you own, et cetera. So yeah, it all starts with the question.
All right. Awesome. So people, including myself, we get scared about running experiments. I think there's a belief that this is a practice that is exclusive for Silicon Valley companies, big, who have like big IT teams and data analytics teams and all of this. I know that at the beginning, maybe it was a little bit like that. So do you have some kind of idea on how these big companies run their experiments?
In terms of in terms of what factor? In terms of
Like, yeah, like quantities, like how many, how often, how like. I think that's the scary part, right?
yeah, it varies a ton. I know giant companies that say they embrace experimentation and run only a small handful. And I know some companies, especially, I would, in the fast growth startup, the high growth startup world, some companies that are running a ton of experiments, but very sloppily and almost, they're spaghetti testing, and they're not being very scientific about it. They're doing it because they're being told to do it, and from up high, which is good. I love velocity. I love shipping as a primary metric. But there's problems on quality, and you can point your ship in the wrong direction and move in the wrong direction fast that way if you're not careful. So, I mean, going back to your point about people and organizations being scared to test, I think it's human nature, because we're paid to be right. We're paid to own a metric. We're paid to make decisions, and when you experiment, you're acknowledging that you could be wrong. So I like, there's a quote, and I forget who it's from, but it's something about the most successful people in the world crave being wrong, or finding out they're being wrong. I'm paraphrasing, and it's we need software updates continuously, right? We need to understand where we are wrong, so we can pivot and with that feedback and adapt to the changes of the environment, to the changes of our team or org or our market, etc. So yeah.
All right. And do you think that you have some idea why is it so hard for startups to, get into A/B testing and experimentation? Do you think it's like a culture thing, or it's a like technical thing, or where do you see it at?
I see it. I don't see it's a technical thing anymore. I mean, you've got tools like Convert and others that make it really easy anymore. It's not about the tools anymore at all. It's about the I would say the people in the process mostly. So on the people side, it's data literacy, and again that the sort of this culture of like I'm being paid to be right, and kind of what I referenced there earlier. There's not a culture of experimentation or a culture of it's okay to fail, it's okay to try and learn and get feedback and that kind of thing. And then on the process side, uh, you there's a lot of cumbersome process that comes with experimentation if you want to be scientifically rigorous about it. So it can stick up a program quite a bit if you are rigorous, which you should be in terms of how you're testing and how you're collecting the data and making sure that there are no validity threats to the experiments that you're running. So should that be a reason to just stop running them? No, you have to learn not only about the customer as you experiment, but you have to learn about experimenting faster and more accurately as you experiment. So it's this dual purpose for experimentation programs that it's hard to juggle. It's hard to do both of those things at once. We see a lot of success in having dedicated roles for those two purposes. So yeah, that kind of speaks to where I see a lot of stickiness in experimentation programs.
All right. So, okay, let's say that that I heard this episode. I'm like, okay, I shouldn't be scared anymore, and I really want to start. Where should my focus be on? Like, should I start building? Like, if I have a team, should I start building the culture first? Like you said, the literacy. Like, have them read some books, take some courses in CXL, or like or just go like straight into learning the tools, understanding the tools, and where should we start?
I wouldn't go straight into the tools. I probably would, as we mentioned earlier, go to the questions, right? The customer research. Think about the problems and opportunities. The opportunities from the market perspective and the business perspective. How is the company expecting to grow this next year? Is it through acquisition, monetization? Okay, I understand this should be my focus. And, usually down funnel is a good place to start. That's where people have money in their hands. But generally, you're going around asking, well, what are the priority questions that we need answered? So you start there, right? And and then you kind of plinko your way against how you're going to get answers, how you're going to get the data to solve that question. And maybe not everything, you don't need data from an A/B test every time. A lot of questions can be answered with other types of research and research methodologies, right? But eventually you'll be like, okay, this seems like a cool test to do. And then you go to if you need to learn how to test foundationally, CXL has a ton of different courses and lessons and mini degrees. Some of the mini degree there on testing will make you bleed and cry. It's quite long and intense, but there are kind of more surgical courses within there. Ton Westling's A/B testing mastery is a great one to learn the basics of it within a few hours, I believe. And then get a tool like Convert, like Optimize, like all the ones that are out there, and start to test. And then you're gonna hit problems. You're gonna hit technical problems. But you're gonna find stuff out too. So that's where I would start, or
Awesome.
how I would
Okay.
start. I say, yeah.
Yeah. Start asking questions. That's the main thing. In regards to that, you talked about like focusing on like the bottom of the funnel. The first question that we need to ask is, what are our goals? Like, even before we want to ask the questions about, like, how we want to measure it, or what we're going to measure. So you believe that it's more in like a goal based thing, or that's what I
Yeah,
kind of understood.
I think the way that I break it down is this is a little bit of a new, I don't know, framework for me, is that you have to understand what to test, and then in a separate kind of effort, you have to understand the where and the how. And now the what to test is that activity of asking the questions. Okay, where should we focus? Down funnel. Okay, acquisition versus monetization versus retention. Okay, I see that. Or product. Um, asking the right questions. Where are the core customer motivations, fears, and hesitancies and doubts and stuff like that? Where are customers tripping up? Asking the questions, getting an understanding of the core customer themes. That's the what, right? And then you need to connect those problems and insights that you find with your, like a goal tree map, for example. So if you want to increase high value form fills for demo requests on a website, to lead towards like a 10% increase in sales qualified opportunities for our sales team, for example, then you can drill back down. It's like, well, if considering that we now know some of the main problems that prospects on our website are encountering before they might request a demo. So let's do these series of initiatives, these series of tests, these series of like tweaks on the website, considering what we now know are the major pains and desires of these prospects. Let's group together a group of activities over the next month or 2 or 3 months to move that dial, right? And in an effort to move the dial of high value form fills in that example. So that's the what to test connected to the your goal of like high value form fields, and then you might have some sub goals in that goal tree of like page visits to the demo request, or just awareness of the demo and around like the CTAs and clicks on there. So you have like these sub engagement type of goals on that goal tree. And then on the other side, again, that other activity is knowing the where and the how. It's also connected to the goal tree. It's like, how many clicks are we getting? How many page views are we getting? Considering that, what would our statistical power be if we were to stand up an intervention here, an A/B test? So this is an analysis that you can do with a lot of online calculators. We've got one at Speero, where you do a bit of a test bandwidth analysis to understand like what would be the minimal detectable effect, considering this maybe event action or page view goal, or conversion goal, form fill goal, considering the amount of traffic that we get or the number of event actions that we get. And so that's the where and the how, right? If we get enough volumes, maybe we can do an ABC test, etc. Or maybe it's just a strict A/B test that we have to run for however long. So those two buckets there is, and what links them together is that goal tree map, right? So the problems link to that, and then the where and the how you test also links to that as well.
Awesome. Where, like, if I want to really geek out into the goal tree system, is there some resources that we can look into?
Yeah, we actually one of our strategists, Gertrude, published a nice article on this, on our goal tree map process and frameworks. We build them in our knowledge bases, be it like Notion. Oftentimes we're using Airtable. If a lot of times our clients don't have them set up, but Confluence is another kind of knowledge based tool that is helpful for this. But even Google Sheets can be done, right? But we've got a great blog article. Maybe I'll share it after this, and you can link to it in the recording notes.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I am really into the tool I use the most. I think in my day-to-day basis is Miro. Miro.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it. That's like my second brain. So yeah, I just okay. I can use Miro for that. So,
yeah, 100%. And now the key is the database aspect of it becomes really handy. But so now there's great integrations between, I think, Airtable and databases like database tools like Airtable and Miro, which are more the visualization side of it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where what we're getting at, like using Miro just like as an interface, and we can have multiple like screens or boards to show internally, and then to show to our partners or clients. And yeah, I love that. Okay, so I'm gonna get more into that. All right. So just my final question. So we can wrap it up. I know that you do this, you do growth, through data and experimentation on a daily basis. I know that's your gig. You do it through Speero. Okay, let's say I'm a client and I say, okay, I want to start doing CRO. I want to start doing a little bit more data driven and experiments, uh, but I still don't know what I need before I get started. Let's say with an agency. So what uh, what would an agency ask of me in order to I can like to start something?
Yeah. So my first question, and it's quite internal, but my first question is to a little bit understand where you're coming from. So like, I've got these three personas in my head around people that want to reach out to Speero as an agency. One is like this, it's personified by like a direct to consumer e-commerce CEO. They're running a store shop that's doing like 50 million online, and they want more money and they want it like yesterday, and
Yeah.
they look at CRO as a way to lower their acquisition cost, right? Let's make our primary sales engine more efficient and make it per and just increase, and yeah. If I hear those signals in my conversations, I'm going to say, okay, let's start down funnel and let's focus on AOV is usually where I go. And actually not conversion. I try to focus on AOV with experimentation.
Okay.
Um, the second group are ones that are maybe a little bit more mature, and I'm working with maybe a product, more of like almost like a team that thinks of itself as a product team, like looking at the website as a product, and they're looking to make the customer experience a lot better. And so that type of activity is around the research that we're doing, getting closer to the customer, understanding how they're flowing through, where are the tripwires, and the activities are all along those lines. And then there's the third, and so that's what the customer experience optimization, you might want to say. This is actually a pretty rare persona, but a really fun one. The third one that I'm trying to attract more and more is the process focused, experimentation focused persona, where you have a program, it's just not working like you want it to. It's not getting the results. You're growing. Maybe you got a new like VP growth or something that came from an org that had a experimentation program that had great results, and now your org is now you need to start up your program. That's where we come along and go from like 1 to 2 or 0 to 1, to build that function, to build that culture within the organization. And we're focused on the process side of things, on speeding up the flywheel, enabling a team or teams within an organization to run. So when I hear questions like, I want to grow experimentation, I want to test more, I want our small team here to be better at it, that's that third persona. So my questions along those three personas are going to be a little bit different depending on kind of where they're coming from. So my questions on the director consumer, it's going to be like, where is your money now? Where are your drop offs? How can we think about that AOV question in particular? If it's the customer experience optimization, then my questions are going to be around audiences and their where their traffic is coming from, and what mindset. So it's getting close to the PPC team, is then we try to curate and improve that customer journey on the website itself. And then on the third one, my questions are going to be around a lot of governance type of questions. Okay, like how's your leadership buying in? How are they resourcing? That kind of stuff. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and I think the first one you described the Shopify
Yeah.
mindset, right? So like dead on.
Yeah.
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 All right. I think that's where the current status is with Shopify entrepreneurs, but we're trying to get them to the third one. That's the goal of this podcast, I think. And by get them, I'm including myself there. So, yeah. So more in like a culture-based, long-term kind of deal. So, That's why I asked this question. So, all right. So Ben, thank you very much for your time. I think this was a lot information and a lot to digest. I took a lot of notes. So thank you for that. And I also know that it was a very high level, let's say. And I would like to invite you to a few other episodes when we can go a little bit deeper into these parts.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be my pleasure. And yeah, thanks for spreading the word about experimentation and this work. So yeah, happy to join anytime.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Have a great one.
Thanks.
Well, there you have it. Awesome information. We literally ran out of time. We wanted to keep going a little bit more, but we want to be respectful of our guests' time and also of your time. So, but the good news is that, as you heard at the end, Ben agreed to come back to further episodes, and we are building a list of stuff that we want to get into. And also, if you have some specific questions that you would like to ask Ben or any of our guests, feel free to reach out, leave your questions in the comments, and we will be glad to jump into. And also remember that if you want to learn more about conversion rate optimization, experimentation, and all of the topics that we are talking about in this podcast, you can go to Convert.com, where we have tons and tons of resources, from articles, blogs, webinars, courses, everything you need to learn, and maybe a little bit faster. But thanks again for your time. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.